Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Play Animal Crossing's New Horizons. I'm Nine. Animal Crossings, plural. Alright. Let's see what's going on here. Apart from extremely long loading times. Oh, Isabelle seems a little bit distracted. Hello there, everybody. Right now in Isle Deckney, it's 5:23 p.m. on Sunday, April 5th, 2020. Now for today's announcements. We have a new friend on our island. Let's give a big Isle Deckney welcome to Sylvana. Congrats, Sylvana. I'm sure you'll enjoy island life here. That's all for now. Hope you all enjoy the lovely days. Oh, okay. She was just studying that schedule for absolutely no reason. Okie dokie. Okay. So this we're leaving here on purpose. I'll talk about it later. Oh dear, I have stuff. Some of the stuff I have is extras that I'm hoping to give away to our folks. Let's see, need to get rid of that. Like these pine board floorings and stuff. A lot of this stuff is just extra. What is a fortune-telling set? Oh. Exactly what you'd expect it to be. Okay. It is my hope to actually, give away, some of this stuff to our friends. I might put the weightlifting set just next to Boone's house. All thing I need to do is go get money. Oh, something's going on my board there. Let's see, anything going on here? Beige desert tile flooring. I would have to pick that up a little bit later. Yay, miles. Okay, how much money do I have? We're gonna do that. There's a reason, I promise. So the question is, where's the most outlandish place I could put a telephone box? So I was asked to talk about other books that I read that's not Discworld. Fishing Tourney on the 11th. Okay. And, I don't know, like, I'm kind of weird in that there's times that I read a lot of books, and there's times when like, a lot of new books, and there's times when I just kind of reread, older books. It kind of just depends on kind of what's going on at that time. Sometimes I feel like reading a new book, and sometimes I very much do not. There's a couple of books that I have a tendency to read, like, once a year. Stranger in a Strange Land and, Battlefield Earth, I tend to read about once a year. I just kind of enjoy those books. They both come with some very, interesting ideas. Stranger in a Strange Land has some very distinctly interesting ideas about how the world should work, which is kind of interesting. And I have a, okay. Oh, sorry, I was just getting into some power meditation. Okay. Stranger in a Strange Land has some very, unique, maybe not unique. Unique's probably not the right word. But it's got some very interesting concepts on how, whoop, there goes my shovel. Great. Gonna have to go buy a new shovel. It's got some very interesting ideas on how the world should work, how people should interact, things like that, which I find fairly fascinating, and I enjoy reading that book because of it. Battlefield Earth just has some very, very cool interactions, character relationships, things like that. To go, I guess, a little further into detail about what these books are, as I see what's going on the island. So Stranger in a Strange Land refers to, it's by Robert A. Heinlein, and the book is about a man named of Valentine Michael Smith, and he is born of a couple of genius-level people who are part of the first manned expedition to Mars. And on this expedition, you know, they go to Mars. He's born there. He's born out of wedlock of two people who are cheating on their spouses. And once he's born and the doctor in question knows that his spouse cheated on him to make this child, after that point, he goes ahead and, you know, kills his spouse, kills the father, and then kills himself. So basically, eventually, everybody dies. What ends up happening is Valentine Michael Smith ends up being this, you know, this child who, here, you can have a portable record player. Ends up being this child raised by Martians. And the Martians are very distinctly different in terms of how they interact with the world. They're super intelligent. They have incredible knowledge about themselves, about the world in general. They live basically forever. Supposedly, they don't have, like, a spirit, is what the game, or not the book tries to tell you. They don't really have a spirit, but their ghost lives on effectively forever. It's just part of the, I guess, the population of the world afterwards. There's actually more old ones, more dead spirits on the world than there are living Martians. And so what ends up happening is the character Valentine Michael Smith is raised by the Martians and then sent back to Earth. And you know, he is a human who thinks like a Martian. And a lot of the book, probably about 2/3, 3/4 of the book, is dedicated to how he kind of learns about humanity, about how people work, and while it's not overtly stated for much of the book, is basically trying to learn how do you be human. That's kind of one of the big things that he's working on, is how can you be human. And then the final section of the book is how he actually uses that knowledge. So it's very, very interesting. There's a lot of kind of interesting philosophies on the nature of ownership, the nature of self, gender relations, religion, somewhat politics. Not all of it is, you know... I don't know why everybody's running around over here. Okay. He must be just really old or something. Here, I have something for you. Please take this portable radio off my hands. It is a portable radio. And I got a terry cloth night cap. Okay. What's particularly interesting about the book, I find, is that a lot of these discussions, a lot of these kind of thoughtful, you know, philosophies in the book, not all of them are good. There are some distinctly interesting, you know, conversations you can have about what's in there, and not all of them are very, you know, necessarily positive. Part of it is the, you know, the era the book was written in. The book tends to be a little bit dismissive of women, to be honest. But it kind of makes for interesting discussion topics. What do I want to give you? Loafers. I doubt you'll actually use them, but... I'm not sure this is my kind of thing, but it looks so cool. Maybe it's time for a change-up. And I'll get money for it. Okay. That's fine. It helps me get rid of stuff, which is fine. So I enjoy reading the book because of it's very thought-provoking. There's a lot of things in there that just kind of like, okay, this is a very interesting way of viewing the world. And I do enjoy books that kind of do that kind of come up with these strange and interesting ways to view the world. It's especially cool. Here's our New person. Here's Sylvana. A lot of unpacking to do. I think Sylvana's the last of our... the last of our neighbors. I don't know if we can get any more. Maybe. I have to go look. Maybe we can just get someone to move in. But as you can see, we're a little bit full up now. Maybe the last 3 slots are for multiplayer. Maybe that's how that works. But there's Sylvana. Yeah, my dog's doing dog things. Yeah, choosing. I know you're not hungry because your food bowl's full, but if you need something to chew on, here you go. So I do read Stranger in a Strange Land every year. So if you're curious about Heinlein, Heinlein's the same guy who did I think it's the cat who walks through time or walks through walls. There's crap. Cannot believe I can't remember the name of this book. Starship Troopers. There's a lot of he's a fairly famous author. So there's a very good chance that you're familiar with his work. So that's that one. Battlefield Earth is crap. Guy who did Scientology. L. Ron Hubbard. And Battlefield Earth's a very fun one because it's meant more of a epic, which is interesting. So it starts out with the concept that humanity is dead, effectively. A alien race known as the Cyclos, who are a mining race who lacks any level of empathy, any level of kindness or generosity. See, I don't really necessarily want to give her the white Symbol-Cloth wall because she'll actually use it, so the thing she has up right now is going to go away. But I know another good way to get rid of it, so... I mean, I could sell it, but... I do have good taste, you're right. And what's interesting, so they take over Earth, they basically bomb humanity into non-existence, and 1,000 years passes. So we end up having these very small pockets of humanity, some of which, some retain the ability to read and write, some maintain their mythologies, but humanity's just kind of gone. And one of the Cyclos, for kind of a variety of reasons, decides to find himself a man, find himself a member of mankind, and train him in how to operate cyclo machinery with the express point and purpose. Can you actually do anything with this? Nope. Okay. We just have a telephone on this cliffside, and it reminds me of the Avengers. That's what that's gonna be. It's just gonna be right there. If not for any reason, it's just gonna be there. Not the Marvel Avengers, the other Avengers. He gets a man and starts to train the man in how to mine, because basically he wants to smuggle out gold and kind of escape Earth. Earth's kind of a backwater position for any of the Cyclos to be in. And this starts kind of Johnny Goodboy Tyler is the man he gets. Johnny Tyler is a very headstrong and forthright man who decides he's going to restore his people to glory, to what humanity was, to reclaim their lost history and their lost time. Ooh, B. Holy crap. You have you have a freaking restaurant. Okay, yes, eggs. Yes. It makes for a very interesting story because you do get to follow Johnny Goodboy Tyler as he learns about the Cyclos, learns how to use cyclo technology, and kind of develops this plan for defeating this you know, this race that has caused problems for races, you know, all across the multiverse. You know, it's a very long book. It clocks in at like 1,000. How did it... Okay. Clocks in at about 1,000 pages, in case you're curious. It's long, as I said, it's an epic. There are multiple story arcs. There's like 3 or 4 different there's 3 or 4 different storylines. So kind of one total story arc. Yes. You won't buy turnips. I understand. So definitely a... Okay, nobody needs these, so I'm selling these. Just gonna get rid of them. Let's see. Don't need the flashy cardigan. Okay. Blah. What was I saying? So it's kind of a cool epic. It's very fun to read because it has different things in there depending on who you are as a reader. What is this? Oh, that is just a cardboard box. Okay. I was hoping it was the actual table beneath it. I will absolutely pick up the espresso maker. One thing that we've been commenting on amongst my friend group who's been playing this is that you can get a lot of things in Animal Crossing, but there are so few surfaces to put those things on. Whoops! I need to get myself a shovel. Let's see. Do I need anything else? No, I think I really just need a shovel. Okay. So I find the book interesting because it has different things in it. I love the idea of people learning about life. Not necessarily life, but I really like the Stranger in the Strange Land because it is someone who does not understand the world, and you get to see kind of the world through his eyes, which is kind of interesting. Battlefield Earth has a very similar concept in that it just does it in a slightly different way, in that Johnny Goodboy Tyler, he also doesn't understand the world, but it's not a world that, you know, you or I live in. It's a completely separate world. So we get to also learn. It's not us, you know, seeing our world in new eyes like you do in Stranger in a Strange Land. We have a brand new world that we are learning through Johnny's eyes, which is being very cool. Well, there's the crown again. I still can't afford it. Hey, Sable. Yep, I am Nye. Wait, what just happened? I don't think I've ever heard you call a customer by name before, sis. Hush, Mabel. You know this is hard for me. Anyway, I'm Sable. I figured it was time we were introduced properly. You can go back shopping now. Okay. That's one of the cool things. As you continue to talk to Sable, you do actually build a relationship with her, which is kind of cool. You actually build a friendship, which I find to be awesome. Let's see. Royal shirts. Ooh, cyber suit. Okay, we want that. Oh, yeah, look at that. Oh, yeah. Fairy dress. Got some socks. Anything else that's cool? Okay, I mean, we're absolutely going to be picking up this suit. And yes, we're going to wear it out. Very cool. Okay. Nothing really else I care about right now, though I'll have to come back. It's just the problem is I have so much stuff in the house right now. I just don't have space. But yeah, so I enjoy Battlefield Earth, partially because it's a fun story, but also, as I said, kind of depending on where you are in life, you kind of get different things out of it. I used to really like it for the action, for the, epic fight against the forces of evil, which is, really what you can really very much call it that. But also on the flip side of that, I also end up enjoying it because, like, the last arcs are very political in nature. They're very there's some economic fun in nature. So it's got a very distinctly different story to tell. I don't know why I'm going in here. I don't want to go into the ABD. I want to go into Nook Shopping. Okay, anything cool? So I think I already have KK Samba. In fact, I think I already have most of these. I think we're going to go ahead and actually skip spending any money today on any of that. We'll go to the ABD and we'll just give up all of our stuff, and I'm just going to have to kind of make room in my house or something like that. I have to actually use some of my furniture, figure out something, because we just don't have the space that I need, and I can't pay off my house right now to make more space. But I really enjoy there's a lot of different things that the story does. And again, very cool ideas, a very distinctly different idea than I've seen in a lot of cases for how the aliens are different than how we are, and distinctly different ideas on how their oppression works, and also how you would fight back. So definitely interesting story. I haven't read in a couple of years, but there's a multi-book series known as the Deed of Paxenarion by Elizabeth Moon, which I've enjoyed for a number of years. It actually took me a very long time to finish it, because the Deed is actually, I think 3 or 4 different books put into one kind of large volume. And as far as I understand, actually, the large volume is volume 1 of... it's like volume 1, so there are actually more volumes to this than I've even seen, and it's a very cool book, or a cool series if you prefer, because it focuses on a female character in a fantasy realm, and there are a lot of gender-based things that go on in the books, but in general, Pax is equal to everybody. Okay, so more miles. What's Boone got to say? I'm stuck in a workout plateau, so decided to try something different. Writing letters. It's the ultimate type of muscle confusion program. My hands have never been so buff, and it's all thanks to you. And the Happy Home Academy gave me 78,000 points, rank S. Your home topped the 20,000 point mark. It's a college celebration, a special gift from the HHA. So that's gonna be because I did the, because I themed a room. What did they actually give me? A bronze HHA plaque. Okay. It's very different, because the character Paxenarion, she's Paxenarion Dorthin's daughter, named for her grandmother, and Pax is really interesting because she just doesn't want to be. She doesn't want for herself what most women in her world would expect, which she doesn't want to just, you know, I'm trying to remember how she phrases it. She doesn't want to just wed the smelly goat herd from, you know, down the lane and pump out a couple of kids for him, and that's her lot in life. She's not interested in that. And so Pax's plan instead is to go off and join a mercenary company like her brother did. And so she does. She joins a mercenary company, and you end up following her adventures, which start out, admittedly, maybe a little bit pedestrian. There's not really a lot that she does to begin with, to be honest with you. Because again, it's a mercenary company. They go and they fight, and they siege, and they, you know, that's kind of what they do. Is they are it is a fantasy world mercenary company. So they go and they make shit happen. What I find especially interesting about the book, though, is that it builds from there. So as time moves on, she becomes more and more important in this mercenary company because she's actually good at her job. There are issues. I'm not going to go into them, but there are issues that happen that she has to overcome. And again, it's a fantasy realm, but it is a fantasy realm that someone paid me a bunch of cherries to come into my town and get something. So I'm gonna go sell all of this. She ends up having issues that she has to deal with, which again, it's very focused on there's a lot of focus in the book about inequalities, about there are gender issue relations that the book goes over. There are put that away too. So she has to deal with that, and she does, and she kind of overcomes, and it makes her a very strong character, a very fun character to follow. Pax has to deal with a lot of crap on a pretty continuous basis, which is, from a character perspective, from the point of view of someone who is watching a character kind of evolve and grow, it's very cool, but it also, the character has to deal with a ton of crap. And they evolve as a character, so they start out as this just kind of baseline fighter. She's kind of a brawler. She just wants to fight. That's really all she wants to do. But as time moves on, as she kind of grows as a character, she goes from that kind of fighter to a paladin, to a warrior of a god of good. And it makes for a very, very cool story. There might be plot holes, but the book does a very good job of resolving them, at least to a reasonable expectation, which I find a little bit hard sometimes. Excuse me, can you get in the freaking net? There we go. I find a lot of fantasy books have trouble with that, especially a book this long. There's also a lot of very good world building. There's a lot of very interesting things that the book does that I haven't seen done necessarily in other books with similar fantasy focuses. And, I'm really used to having very male characters in books like this. And when we do happen to get a female character who does something the way Pax does, a lot of the book seems to be focused on on sexuality. There's a lot of sex from that character, and that's kind of how they get through things. And the Dita Pax Arion doesn't do that. Sex is a subject that does not come up much in the books, and that actually ends up, I think, being to the book's benefit, is that it really doesn't, try to use the fact that, Pax is a woman as a way to get her through things. If sex comes up, it's either just something that's there, or this is a challenge that we must get through for a variety of reasons. If you read the book, you'll understand what I mean. Let's see, I just picked up, I was not even aware there was a movie coming out for it. I just picked up the Artemis Fowl books again. They're also a set of books that I enjoy reading every once in a while, because as I talk about, books and stuff that I read, you probably come to the conclusion that I really enjoy juxtaposition. I really enjoy the concept of putting two things together that don't really belong. I also enjoy reimaginings of topics that I know. And I really enjoy the fact that Artemis Fowl books juxtapose, high technology with fantasy, and also that they reimagine the concept of what fairies actually are, of what the fairy world is. Makes for a lot of fun, and I'm always in for a good heist story. So, I love Ocean's 11. I love, a lot of those, Snatch, Lucky Number 11. I love a lot of these, movies that are all about the heist and how it was pulled off and stuff like that. And that makes those books a lot of fun. I also, really enjoy a lot of the characters in the books. They're childish, sure, but definitely a lot of fun there. For those who don't know, so I'll just, give little bits on everything. The Artemis Fowl books are literally about a young child, about 12 years old, Irish boy, genius, name of Artemis Fowl, the name of the books. And, full inventory. The books are about how he, in the first book, intends to steal the gold off the fairies. But it turns out that fairies are not these, you know, just fantasy low-tech things we've been hearing in stories. That's just how we've learned them as humans. They're actually way farther advanced than we are. Their technology eclipses us. They just happen to be very peace-loving people. And his intention is to abuse these facts about them and get them to give him their ransom money, effectively. Steal one of the officers of their peacekeeping corps, kidnap her, and then, you know, convince the fairies to pay for her return. Lots of fun twists and turns, and the author does a fairly good job of hiding details from the audience while not doing the typical haha, I know it, you don't stuff that you typically see in that sort of thing. It very much has that feeling that a lot of, you know, good books do, in that the main character is outthinking us at the same time as he is outthinking, he's outthinking the audience as he's outthinking the, his targets, which makes for a very cool story that focuses on the fact that the main character is a genius and that we just can't keep up. Which I really like it when books do that. That's not the first book I've read that did that, where the, main character is supposed to be smarter than I am. And so the way that we show that he's smarter than me is that the book gives me all the hints that the main character uses, but if I can't come up to the same conclusion he did, that's not my fault, or that's not his fault. You know, he's smarter than I am, and he's going to actually act that way. So it's a very cool thing to do. They are you know, they are like young adult books. I do enjoy, and you'll hear this with some of the recommendations I have, I do enjoy books that are adult in nature. I do enjoy, you know, reading and being challenged. I also enjoy books that are very low impact. They don't require a lot of thought on my part. I just get to kind of enjoy the action, enjoy following along. I don't have to employ a lot of critical thinking. Both are fun, and I don't think there is any problem with someone who wants to enjoy both. So, you know, I talk about these, you know, these fantasy books, which are, you know, Artemis Fowl is definitely fantasy. So is Deed to Paxenarion. You know, I'll talk about these fantasy books, and, you know, I'll talk about these, you know, childish fantasy books. Deed definitely isn't one, but Artemis Fowl definitely is. You know, I'll talk about these books, and, yes, you know, some of them are very, very, very low-key, but, you know, I also read through the entirety of, I mean, The Hobbit's not exactly big in there, but I've read through the entirety of Lord of the Rings, which I also recommend. Hopefully I don't have to actually tell you guys what Lord of the Rings is. I've read through the entirety of the Odyssey, which was a lot of fun. I actually do very much recommend. We got Happy Overachiever. We got an S rank from the Happy Home Academy, therefore we got that one. That's kind of cool. Anything else in here? So I do, you know, I do also read the high stuff, the, you know, the classics, or the books that are, you know, higher tier writing, but I very much enjoy reading young adult novels. I find them to be a lot of fun because I get to just kind of enjoy a fantasy romp, and I don't have to, you know, it can be an escape as opposed to a let's start thinking a lot. So the Artemis Fowl books are fun. There's a lot of them. Each one is about a new heist or a new event that comes with the same characters, and I kind of enjoy that ongoing storyline that I get to kind of following along. So definitely recommend those, and apparently Disney's about to release an Artemis Fowl movie. Like, I just read that it was going to be releasing in theaters in May, but now they're going to go straight to digital because of the whole coronavirus thing. So, Artemis Fowl's fun. I enjoy the majority of the catalog of Diana Wynne Jones. Probably a lot of you aren't probably familiar with her name, but you're probably familiar with who she is. She's the author behind Howl's Moving Castle. And if you guys actually, you know, for the anime nerds out there, you probably know Howl's Moving Castle. You've probably seen the Miyazaki movie. If you haven't, highly recommend it. The actual books are very interesting. I was familiar. I actually hadn't read Howls before I saw the movie. No, I take that back. It's a lie. I hadn't read the book before the movie came out. When I learned the movie came out and I learned who wrote it, I went and got the book and read the book before I watched the movie. As usual with Miyazaki, the movie is very decidedly different than the source material. But I was reading Diana Wynne Jones for a long time, actually, before Howl's Moving Castle came out. She's got a very distinct style. She's got a very fairy tale style that she tends to write, in that... I took a class on fairy tales once. Fairy tales have this habit of introducing new concepts and ignoring the old ones. So, you know, you go see, you know, Beauty and the Beast, for example. We introduced the concept of the talking and animated furniture, and then we just abandon it. It makes sense, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. It's just there. You know, you have someone who finds a magic lamp. We're not going to explain where the magic lamp came from. We're going to use the magic lamp, and once we use the magic lamp's gone. We're never going to talk about it again. It's not important anymore. We just kind of move forward in the story. She does a lot of that, too. If you guys ever go read Neil Gaiman's Stardust, it does a lot of the same stuff. And Howl's Moving Castle, as a book, is a lot of the same stuff. It has a habit of kind of, yes, let's talk about the thing that's going to happen, but at the same time, you know, once it happens, we're just going to kind of move on and ignore it. So there's kind of a lot that goes on there. The conclusion of the book is, as I said, very different than the conclusion of the movie. But Howl's Moving Castle is actually a 3-part series. It's Howl's Moving Castle, The Castle in the Sky, and The House of Many Ways. I didn't like The House of Many Ways as much as I liked the other two, but it was still a fairly decent book. Diana Wynne Jones has a lot of very fun things she does. All of her books take place in different universes, so, and she does magic differently. Her magic, every book has a different way of doing magic, in a kind of fantasy setting, and I really enjoy that. Sometimes, you know, she doesn't really delve into the whys of the magic as much as just, let's just talk about magic. But it tends to be very, very fun way she does things, so I recommend just her entire catalog. But I got into her through A Sudden Wild Magic and Deep Secret. Both books were fairly fun. I read them when I was much younger. They're not really meant for young audiences. A Sudden Wild Magic talks a lot about sexuality, for example. And Deep Secret is, you know, kind of a love story hidden as something else. But they are definitely good books that I enjoyed. And then Howl's Moving Castle is pretty fantastic, along with its sequels. She's got a fairly large library, so I definitely recommend her books. They were a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I do think she died a number of years ago, so unfortunately nothing new coming out there. You know, I did enjoy Harry Potter. Shouldn't really have to introduce that too much to you guys. I did enjoy Eragon. I actually reread it a number of years ago. I need to go back and actually read it again. But I actually enjoyed Eragon. Never watched the movie, don't really ever intend to. But the actual books were fairly interesting. There was some childishness to the actual writing, but you gotta understand is that the author was a freaking child. Like, the first book was written when he was 17. He was actually a huge hero to me as a kid, because I also wanted to be that child writer. And unfortunately, I just kind of lost the knack. But I actually I did enjoy Eragon. A lot of these series I really enjoyed. Let me think. What other things can I recommend? Actually, see, I do most of my reading on my phone. I have the Amazon Kindle app. So I end up having, you know, just stuff that I just kind of go through. And for a very long time, I was doing Kindle Unlimited. So I would just look at just a ton of books. And just kind of work my way through. I've talked about this in the past, but the Emerillia books were kind of fun. For a while, I got into I'm looking for my other. I've only found 2 of my fossils today, so I'm looking for my other fossils. I got into this genre called Lit RPG, which is a genre entirely based on the concept of either a player gets stuck inside of a video game, very Sword Art Online or dot hack style. A player gets stuck, and then that video game just becomes their reality, and how do they deal with it? And Emerillia is fun because it turns out the video game is actually reality, and kind of goes into there. The writing isn't spectacular, I'll tell you that outright. It's not bad, but there's definitely, you know, some certain words get used a lot. A lot of characters have a habit of grinning wolfishly, for example. And, you know, the writing is very young adult level, so it's not going to challenge you at all. But there's a lot of very cool ideas, lots of very fun things to do, ways to use magic, ways to use technology. It's a fantasy series that becomes sci-fi eventually. There's just kind of lots of fun stuff that ends up happening in the books. And if you like the concept of, you know, a video game becoming the big deal, I do actually recommend it. Similar books would be like Orconomics, which is kind of fun, which focuses on actually economics in a fantasy world, which was something I really wasn't expecting when I first came across it. And then Yahtzee, the video game reviewer, I can't remember the name of his, I'd have to go look it up, but he also did a similar book a number of years ago that I recommend. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, and I can't find it in my phone right now. I really enjoyed the first two Dune books, so Dune and Dune Messiah. I never really went any further in the books than that. But, you know, again, books that I do recommend. You know, for those of you who are not familiar with Dune, it follows Paul Atreides, and it's very much a political story, at least the later ones. Oh, apparently all of the fossils from today we already had. It follows Paul Atreides and the politics of the great houses of the galaxy, basically, and everybody focuses on this one planet, the name of a dune or Arrakis, where spice comes from. And spice is it's a chemical, a drug that both extends your life expectancy, you know, makes you live longer. It can also give you powers that include the ability to, you know, potentially see a little bit into the future, among other things. Problem is, the more you take it, the more you're addicted to it, and withdrawal when it comes to spice is death. So the more spice you take, the longer you live, the more powers you have, but the more likely it is that you're going to die. Stories focus on how Paul ends up living on the planet where spice is part of the very air, while trying to avoid being killed by another one of the great houses, and eventually integrating with the quote-unquote savage people of Arrakis. Very fun story. I really enjoy the politics in the books, and the mysticism. I've talked in the past about how I like mythology and mysticism in books. The mysticism of the books are very, very fun. There's this awesome kind of mythology / religion that gets built up in the books, and I love how it becomes a kind of central portion of the story. So, you know, Dune's fantastic. If you guys haven't read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you need to follow along with lots of crazy adventures, lots of humor. It's very dry, you know, British humor. Not everybody's into that, but I've always been a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide, and for those of you who don't know the humor as well, it is the 5 books of the trilogy. I haven't read the other books. So Aeon Colfer, the guy who did the Artemis Fowl books, did actually get permission to continue the story and make he made at least a 6th book. I don't know about past that. Unfortunately, I don't think they landed very well. I don't think people were very appreciative of the newer books. But yeah, the first 5 are absolutely fantastic. I enjoy them a lot. I think they have a lot of awesome stuff going for them, even if you know, maybe the last one isn't quite as good as the other ones. Larry Niven is absolutely fantastic author. This one's sci-fi, and this one's what is known as hard sci-fi. So this is science fiction where it likes to go into the science and how things actually work. And the Larry Niven books that I would personally recommend are the Pax books, so the Pack Protectors, starting with the book titled Protector, as well as the Ringworld books. Ringworld should be familiar to a lot of you, because if any of you are familiar with Halo, the video game, Halo was actually based in a big way on Ringworld. Ringworld focuses on the concept of a part Dyson sphere. So a Dyson sphere is supposed to be a gigantic construction, a gigantic sphere that surrounds a sun, surrounds a star, at 1 or 2 astronomical units out, and can absorb all the power of the star. Not only absorbs all the power, has tons and tons of space in it for people to live in. It is kind of the ultimate the ultimate construction for a living race, because you get 100% of the solar power of a star, so you have all of the power. There's never a question. You have everything that star can actually give you. You also have such space. There's so much space in a Dyson sphere. So, that is a major part of it, is that any race that exists at some point will run out of space on their planet and run out of space on the planets of their solar system. The next step up would be a Dyson sphere. Well, Ringworld goes into the concept that, well, a Dyson sphere is not only a huge deal. You need lots of materials to make it. It needs to be safe. It needs to have, gravity generators in order to make sure people can actually stick to the inside of it, because you live on the inside of a Dyson sphere, not the outside. Not necessarily the outside. So, that's a big deal. So instead, why don't we make a ring around the sun? We don't get quite as much energy because it's a ring, not a full sphere, but you still get a ton of energy off of it. You still get a ton of space off of it. So it was a thought experiment of what happens if we make this, and then a story was built into that thought experiment of okay, let's go explore the ring world. What can it be? Well, apparently, it captured people's imaginations, and they started sending letters to Larry Niven saying, "Hey, how does this work? How does that work? How does the air not spill out? How does the forces that you're talking about that would require you to make gravity would potentially break the ring world? How did you solve for that?" So the one book became a series of books, and each successive book was continuing the storyline, but also was answering some of these questions on how does this work, how does that work. I consider the books to be a lot of fun. There's a giant focus on sex I know a lot of people don't particularly like in the books. I kind of gloss over those and move on. But again, the ideas in there are also a lot of fun. I never read the succeeding ones after the first one, but Ender's Game was very interesting. A lot more about the psychology of warfare and the psychology of children and of humans in general. And how would we deal with a fight against an alien species or a group of aliens that their method of thinking is so far removed from our own that we can't even predict what they're going to do. Ender's Game is I love the psychology in it, and there's a huge focus on it. I didn't watch the movie because I somehow never felt that the movie would really capture it, but I've always wanted a video game based on the war games the kids play. Robert Aspirin created a series of books called the Myth Adventures books, MYTH, and it focuses on, oh crap, I'm forgetting his name. Hold on, I'm looking it up. I have it really in front of me. I can get the name. It is a first-person series of books that focuses on Skeev, Skeev the Great, who is a boy who literally knows how to cast 2 spells, and he gets into all these adventures where those 2 spells have to save him. And it really screws with the concept of mythology and, what magic is, what demons are. Demons are just entities from other dimensions. Things like that. Lots of that kind of Ocean's 11 style feel of let's solve this problem with what we have at hand, and you might not necessarily hear the actual solution until later on. later on in the book where it goes back and talks about it. Lots of humor, very funny things. There's a lot of parody in the books, which I find a lot of fun. So they're very feel-good books. I definitely recommend this. There's a good 11 of them. Unfortunately, Robert Asprin, I believe, died before the final one got finished, so it got pushed out kind of as he had it. So the very end of the series is a little bit weaker than the rest, but still ends up being a very, very fun series I do recommend. Robert Asprin also wrote a different set of books called the Dragons Wild books. This one's actually kind of really close to my heart because it plays with the concept that dragons actually exist on Earth in human form, and that when a dragon is born, they're actually born as humans, raised as humans, not told they're dragons until later. And our main character happens to be a dragon in one of these such situations, and his parents die before he actually learns what he is. But he's also one of the most purebred dragons of all time, and the more powerful a dragon is, the most powerful dragons are followed by other dragons. So because he is one of the most pure-blood dragons that exists, he potentially will build a large following base naturally, but at the same time, the other dragons who are in power don't want him to do this, so they're naturally going to try to step in. One of the reasons I love this book so much, or this series of books, is that it takes place in New Orleans. So a lot of the books take place right down on Canal Street in the French Quarter. And it's very fun because I can actually go down there and I know exactly what it's talking about. I know the places that the book takes place in. Unfortunately, again, Robert Asprin died before the series ended, and the person who took over for him, I don't feel she did a particularly good job picking up the reins for the last book that was written. There's a lot of unfortunate narrative inconsistencies, and I don't think the series continued. But the first 3 books are pretty good. Taking a sharp right turn, Sherlock Holmes is actually fantastic. I know a lot of people hear about Sherlock Holmes, and you sit there and you're like, man, this series of books has been out forever. You know, Arthur Conan Doyle wrote them, late 1800s. I've heard about Sherlock everywhere. What's very interesting is that the Sherlock that you guys see on television and movies is not always the same Sherlock that is actually in the books. And it makes for a very interesting dichotomy, especially if you grew up on the TV versions. The books are actually very fun. You actually do have a chance as the reader to solve the crime before Sherlock does himself. Odds are you're not going to be able to. Sometimes there is literal information that the book does not give you. So you might actually not have all of the information before, you might not have all the information in time to actually solve before Sherlock does. But oftentimes you actually can come to some of the same conclusions he does. So the books are generally fun. I've read, I think, every Sherlock story. I'm not 100% sure on that. A crest doorplate. Interesting. But definitely recommend Holmes. Again, another sharp right turn as I start running out of time to talk to you guys about books. I could keep going. I love reading, and I love different types of books. I've talked about this in the past, but Danita K. Paul also has a small place in my heart, and this is mostly because she wrote the books in question out of Colorado Springs, where I used to live. Actually, the place that she wrote was down the street from my house. She's a religious author, so I'm gonna preface this with that. She is, I'm not sure, Christian or Catholic. I get colorblind at that level, but she is either a Christian or Catholic lady, and the books that she writes are meant to be young adult novels that share her religion with others. But they're actually fantasy books, and the fantasy books I think are at least written very well. The religion is somewhat heavy-handed in there, so if you're very anti-religion, they're not going to be for you. But they have some very fun ideas. The stories are actually interesting. The actual religion itself doesn't factor in too much. It's kind of hard for me to really say that, because it doesn't depending on which book we're on. But it's the Dragon Keeper Chronicle. So if you're a fan of dragons, and you want to hear stories that relate to them, they're there. I find them to be very, very fun. I don't find the actual religious nature of them to be a incredible detractor of them. As a person who I'm not really into religion myself, so I think it should say something that I'm not really into religion and I still enjoy these books. But as I said, sometimes it does get a little bit heavy-handed. You can kind of move through it because the heavy-handed nature is kind of short, and the real concept of the books is just that God is there, God is watching, and He will help, and that's really kind of about it. They just kind of go into it a lot. If you're a person who enjoys magic, the books are pretty fantastic. I kind of do recommend them. It's going to be more up to you on that, though. Let me see. Anything else? Drew Hayes is another author that I would definitely recommend. He tends to be more of a, oh, hello. What's up? Do you ever just feel like crying? Sure I do. Everybody feels sad sometimes. I feel like you need to cry. Don't hold back. Use my reactions to cry. Okay, well, I've learned a new reaction. Hooray! I have learned to cry. I weep for tomorrow. Drew Hayes tends to be very fun because he is... I consider him to be kind of the... we have learned new reactions. Oh my god, there's that many reactions in the game? Apprentice Dancer. Okay. I consider Drew Hayes to be kind of a Weird Al Yankovic of books. He does a lot of parody of a lot of things. I think his parodies are very, very interesting. He tends to focus on a concept and run with that concept for the series of book. So one of his book series is... I need to upgrade this. Net. One of his books is Fred the Undead Accountant, I think is the name of the series. We have Fred, who got turned into a vampire, but he doesn't really feel like being a vampire. He didn't learn how to be a vampire, so he just kind of continued his life, and his life is literally, he's an accountant. So you have a vampire accountant who is doing the taxes for all of the supernatural folk in his area. Again, kind of a soft spot in my heart because it takes place in Colorado, which is where I used to live. But it's very fun because lots of terrible things keep happening to Fred, and he has to solve them. But he tries to solve them in a way that does not involve him being a vampire. So it very, very kind of fun stories there, focusing around the concept of I do not want to drink people's blood. I do not want to rule by fear. I do not want to deal with super strength. Fred's a huge scaredy cat. He's a giant wimp. Doesn't want to do any of that stuff. Drew Hayes also has a lot of cool one-offs. He did a series of books called Superpowers, which was the idea was that people have superpowers all throughout the world, and some people can control their superpowers, some people who can't. If you can control your superpower, you get to go to school, go to the university, learn how to control it, learn what to do with it. Okay, he already has that boss too. And people who actually graduate the university become true superheroes. And the story is about a group of kids who are the people who can't control their powers. Usually they'd be extremely dangerous, but a drug was developed that allows them to control it, and so they were allowed into this university on a kind of a temporary pass, and we follow their stories. These books tend to be extremely long because Drew was actually uploading them one chapter at a time. Onto his website and only published them when they were complete. So because of that, they go extremely long because it was more of a serial sort of thing. So think a lot more of like a Shonen Jump manga as opposed to a published per book manga. The Shonen Jump stories tend to go on a lot longer. Definitely very fun stories. He also has one of the ones that I wish he would actually do more of, and I haven't heard him do anything on. I can't remember the name of the series. I'm actually looking right now, and I can't find it. Spell, Swords, and Stealth is a fun story that takes place inside of a D&D universe, essentially. And the NPCs in the D&D universe become the heroes. And but it's not the people you'd think. The orc that was the bartender, the really big, beefy orc, is the one that actually learns to use magic. The human guard who's to defend the village is actually the one that becomes the thief. The kind of princess, the daughter of the mayor who was constantly getting kidnapped, she's actually the barbarian. And the little gnome whose body is twisted, whose attack is by throwing daggers, he's the paladin. So it very much plays with storylines. Drew also has another one that I like called Forging Hephaestus, which actually follows the story of a villain as opposed to the story of the hero, and how she creates her own supersuit. So lots of fun stories there. Following along the same concept of Forging Hephaestus is a book series called blank of a D-list supervillain, so Confessions, Origins, and Secrets of a D-list supervillain. Very fun stories that literally follow a guy who is basically a supervillain / hero. He kind of waffles back and forth. He's not very good at it, but he's kind of getting better. And he's very much a Iron Man type superhero, so it's all about his super suit and how he develops it. Those were actually a lot of fun. The book by Yahtzee that I was talking about earlier was Mogworld. I'm actually literally looking at my phone going through here, seeing if I can give you guys any other recommendations off of here. Let's see. Anything I have not talked about yet. Yeah, I talked about Terry Pratchett in Discworld, but Terry Pratchett wrote a bunch of other books, and one of them I really enjoyed was the Bromeliad trilogy, which is about a bunch of people who are effectively gnomes, like 3-inch tall people living in a human world. So we get to kind of see the world from their eyes. I didn't read very much, but P.G. Wodehouse's Jeeves and Wooster books. I actually started reading those after I watched the Jeeves and Wooster like TV show that had Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry. The books are actually reasonably fun, so I actually kind of do recommend them. The Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud, a lot of fun. Again, very different way to look at summoning and magic, alternate history, following the story of Nathaniel the summoner and Bartimaeus the demon he summons, and how they interact in alternate history England. Michael Chabon's Summerland was a lot of fun if you're a big fan of both baseball and southwestern or midwestern American mythology, both kind of Native American mythology as well as tall tales, and focusing also on the concept of baseball as a kind of central point of the world. Very fun stuff there. Isaac Asimov is fantastic. I cannot recommend more. Both the iRobot series of books. There is actually a series to it. It's more than just the one book. iRobot becomes the Caves of Steel series. iRobot Foundation was also very fun. The very end of Foundation is very weird as a series, but the Foundation series is fantastic. Frank Beddor's Looking Glass Wars, which is a reimagining of Alice in Wonderland. Very fun and interesting. And then kind of the last one I'd recommend looking at is I'm trying to get the exact name on this one. Felix Gilman's Thunderer. Thunderer is the last one I'll describe, and I found it to be a very thought-provoking book. It's about a giant city, a city so large that we don't know where the horizons are, a city that changes all the times and cannot be mapped, a city where gods walk among us, and as they walk, they change the map of the city entirely. And we follow the story of one person who lost his god. His god vanished from a space elsewhere in the world. He heard that gods come to the city, and he came chasing, and he gets involved in other events that are a little bit beyond him, and it builds into this kind of grand story throughout the city. There's supposedly more than one book to this. There's actually supposed to be like a sequel. I've never read the sequel, so I can't speak for it, but Thunder was a very, very interesting book. There's a little bit of Peter Pan in there. But the interactions of the gods with the populace, how they change the face of the world, was something I found very interesting, and it made gods a distinct. Oh, okay, cool. It made gods a distinct deus ex machina, but it was done on purpose. They're inscrutable. They're not understandable. In fact, one of the characters is a researcher who is trying to understand the gods, and he doesn't end up doing very well on it. But the gods are meant to be inscrutable. They're not meant to be understood in the book. And it makes for a very interesting way for the author to kind of do things that our characters have to deal with. But there are theories in the book. And so while there aren't actual rules, there's the hint that rules might exist that we don't quite understand. Also a book that I do recommend. I had a lot of fun with it. I need to actually read the sequel sometime to see if it was actually any good. That is as much as I have off the top of my head. So I talked about books straight for an hour. If you do want me to elaborate on any of these, especially that last 15 minutes of recommendations where I couldn't go into any of them, do let me know, and I can give you a little bit more details. Just comment in the comments that, hey, you didn't talk much about Thunderer. Can you tell me more? Let me know. I do want to hear what books you guys recommend. I can't promise I'm actually going to read any of them, but I will absolutely go potentially look. I have a lot of time on my hands with the quarantine, and reading is one of the things I do when I don't feel like playing video games or, waiting for the shower to heat up or I'm eating lunch. I literally just sit down and read. So I'm always on the lookout for more books and always on the lookout for good recommendations. So definitely let me know. Also, it helps anybody else who happens to be looking at this video who is also looking for a good recommendation. And as always, if there's anything else you guys want to hear me talk about, let me know. This series is not stopping anytime soon. I've got a lot to upgrade in my house. We've got lots of money we have to earn, and I have to start customizing this island. We got to start putting more... You blasted fish! Stop it! I'm just going to wait for it to turn. Turn. Do it. There we go. We still got a fair amount to do in Animal Crossing. We're not going to be stopping anytime soon, so I need stuff to talk about. So if you do want me to talk about anything, do let me know. Thank you for watching, everybody. I love you all. I'll catch you next time.